Hey, it's Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. Now, I was looking for fun ways to tell you that Mint's offer of unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month is back. So I thought it would be fun if we made $15 bills. But it turns out that's very illegal. So there goes my big idea for the commercial. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Speed slow after 35 gigabytes if network's busy. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
With a major selection of the looks your kiddos love starting at just $4 in the Walmart app, a new school year means a stylish new them. Who knew? Find skater skirts and Crocs that say, I'm casual but cool. Sparkly sneakers that say, it's my classroom, you're just learning in it. And preppy polos that say, I'm the teacher's pet, even if they're mommy's menace at home. Find their favorite styles starting at just $4 in the app. The Walmart you thought you knew is now new.
Hello and welcome to The Price of Football, the show that looks at the money behind the beautiful game with me, Kevin Day, and Liverpool University's Kieran Maguire. You'll have noticed, of course, there is a little chuckle in my voice. It normally is when we start the show because Kieran tries to make me laugh. But we've gone straight into recording this episode after recording the episode of a couple of days ago, which had the now classic jam story. The story I didn't know about Kieran being dismissed from Tesco's for inappropriate use of jam, and I'm still making me laugh an awful amount. It's just the look of still. I can see you welling up telling the story, Kieran. I can see it still rankles that your little harmless jam prank, which you say it's harmless, but it would have cost a lot of old people a lot of money in wet wipes.
Yes. It was probably one of the best things that ever happened to me because it made me go back and put more effort in at college. So I thought, because I'd reached the conclusion: is this what working life is like? I better go and So I went back to college and sort of knuckled down a bit more and ended up at university. And I only went to university because I didn't want to work.
I've not seen the film Sliding Doors, Kieran, but I understand the concept. I mean, it's a very interesting concept. We talk about that sliding door moment. I think that would have been a much harder film to sell had the sliding door moment been you being sacked for putting too much jam in the wrong donuts. That would have been. I would have watched it. Of course, what an amazing thing to think of. You and I wouldn't be here if you hadn't squirted that huge amount of jam into the wrong donuts. You and I wouldn't be here now.
That's correct.
I'd be Justin Morehouse and you'd be Swiss Ramble. I mean,
and it probably would have won a BAFTA.
I imagine so. I imagine the first episode would have won a BAFTA. But yeah, you never know. We might be another sliding door. If anybody from a well-known jam company is listening, Kieran, we could suddenly become the face of their new product. I'd love to see. Imagine, I'd love to see Alexander Seferin walking around a Lidl somewhere in Switzerland, buying things. I'll just get a jar of blackberry conserve. Hang on a sec, I'm not buying that one. That's a bloke from Glasgow University and his football finance expert mate. Also, I didn't know somebody messaged us to say you're not a football finance expert, you're only a comedian. And I just thought. I took it in good part. And I thought, only? What do you mean only?
Boy,
there's football finance experts. There's
10 a penny these days.
Well, there's two of them. There's two of them. They say, here we are. Thankfully, everybody, our last ever emergency holiday pod, which, as you can probably tell, was recorded some weeks ago. It's August the 7th. Very kindly, producer Guy has put that again. Seems to be in bigger letters every episode we've done, Kieran, which day it is. Because I think he knows my attention span is not as not as lengthy as you. I even drifted off trying to talk about how long my attention span was, which is not a good sign. He knows you. Let's just say your attention span is longer than mine, basically. So I think he realises and Finley's attention span is even worse than I am.
It's just wandered into the room.
It's because he heard the word jam. And he said, Daddy's doing his jam laugh. And I'm going to go in and see if there's a wonky chump. So it's August the 7th. We have 3 questions for you today. As far as I can see, Kieran, none of them involve percussive names of footballers.
True.
Or the amount of money clubs can make by pouring beer upside down. So there's a semi-serious tone to this, Kieran. And I imagine, as we've had 2 weeks off, our first proper news pod back is going to be a very long pod. Although hopefully we'll have some good news about Morecambe by then. Matt Taylor, now this is, I think, a really interesting question, Kieran. And it's one of those questions I love because I should have thought of it before, but it's one of those things subconsciously I feel I've wanted to ask you for a long time. So, Matt Taylor, when fans cover up advertising boards with flags, are the sponsors entitled to a refund? Now, you tend not to see this so much along the side of the ground, but certainly you do. Like at grounds like Forest, for example, they have some brilliant tifos going along the end and across the middle between the upper and lower tiers. You'll see it at Palace. You'll see it at a lot of grounds when, and occasionally you'll see a steward half-heartedly trying to lift a Union flag up or an Irish flag up. But for the most part, some of these things are so elaborate they're impossible to remove. So the sponsors, I assume, or the advertisers for a particular game would be all over this, would they?
From my understanding, it's a bit of a yes and no. If we take a look at the way that advertising space is sold these days, because effectively every club in the Premier League at least has signed up for mobile perimeter advertising, where at the edge of the pitch, and you'll see that because clearly you've got the cameras are focused on that bottom half. Those are normally sold in 30-second slots. During a lull in the play, there's nothing better than going, why is my football club advertising for Turkish-based hair replacement treatment and things like that? The Premier League sells some of those, and individual clubs sell some of those as well. So there's a central agreement, and then there's a local agreement. Those are policed pretty rigorously, because the sponsors are saying, look, I only get, I've signed up for 2 30-second slots and it's now covered with Union flags. And the amounts involved actually can be quite sizable. So I think there would be an issue there. And I think you would see more draconian policing of those particular areas. When it comes up to the higher levels, and when you go to the Emirates or Old Trafford, and you see all of the flags from all of those magnificent supporter groups from around the country and elsewhere and so on, it tends to be sort of a nod and a wink. The sponsors know that people will get to see their brand for a few minutes. And that's effectively built into the price that the club's going to charge. So because many clubs want to project the inclusive nature of all of these fan bases, and they're coming from all these different parts of the country with all the different flags, the amount of money being charged for the equivalent advertising space tends to be fairly nominal. And they will have told the sponsors, look, you will get to see it, but you won't get to see it for very long.
Yes, interesting, isn't it? It comes back to that old debate about we're constantly being told by the broadcasters that the fans are the most important part of the game, and their flags and their banners add some atmosphere. Makes you wonder why they're trying to price so many of us out of the grounds, basically. Also, I should point out, Kieran, that if you were to see some of the people where I sit at Palace, you would fully understand why they might advertise Turkish-based hair replacement products. It's a very lucrative market, I imagine, for some of the people around there. This is a question I've meant to ask you for a couple of weeks, Kieran, and I don't know whether you know the answer, but I think you'll certainly know somebody who does. The badge, the eagle on Palace's latest kit, is noticeably smaller. than in previous seasons. And the WhatsApp rumour is, and I have heard this actually from someone in a relatively senior position, is that the badge was made small. The kits are signed off a year ago, so how true this could be, I don't know. But the theory is that we wanted to put FA Cup winners underneath the badge. The
Premier League said no.
Well, yeah, the FA said you can't put FA Cup winners, but you can put Emirates FA Cup winners. And the Premier League said, no, you can't put you can put FA Cup winners, but you can't put Emirates FA Cup winners. Does that seem?
That sounds quite plausible to me, because the Premier League will have an official airline partner, but also there are restrictions that Palace have their own front of shirt sponsor, and you're only allowed to have one front of shirt sponsor. I don't know whether you saw.
Okay.
I know I retweeted it. There's a club in some country,
the Austrian
Austrian
one,
one,
who made,
which it was a bit of a smorgasbord of commercial partners. Now it could be that in 12 months' time, in 3 years' time, the Premier League decides that we're going to have back of shirt sponsors and short sponsors, and go down the rumour or the vehicle of rugby league and so on. Equally, I'm hearing from some of the sponsors is that we're paying so much money for front of shirt exclusivity that we wouldn't be willing to pay. We'd only pay a fraction of that if there's going to be quite a few. And they've done their sums, and actually it's better to have fewer brands but more high profile. And that works. I mean, if you take a look at what happens at Wimbledon, the likes of Rolex and Evian and so on, very high. Wimbledon is very, very clever at sort of that. You're paying for exclusivity. We will only have a very few number of commercial partners visible, and your brand will benefit from that.
A lot of people picked up on your social media thing about that Austrian team who, it's terrible, I can't remember their name now, but literally every part of the shirt and shorts was covered with a different sponsor. But I did a bit of research on them, and they've made that their thing. They've made that their USP, that they've decided that it's actually quite funny. So their fans are actually buying into the fact that can they cover up every single bit of the shirt so you don't even know what colour the kit is. Now, I imagine the authorities at one stage will put a stop to that. It must make life difficult for referees, but for the moment, it's a very useful way for them to make money, because smaller sponsors, for example, are only too happy to be involved in this prank or this jape, if you like. So working on the basis that they will never attract a Rolex or a Standard Chartered, why not make a thing of getting 50 sponsors that can pay a tenner each, whatever. So
exactly, and it is good publicity, and if you've got a good marketing, an innovative marketing department that works. I think Paddy Power did something similar a few years ago with Huddersfield. They had some sort of sash, and they knew it was going to reject it, but they also knew that the publicity that it would generate was actually greater than the value of the sponsorship deal, which didn't go ahead.
Well, it's strange because also in this country there's a nostalgia market for sponsors now, like for old kit. Brighton want old Brighton kits with skint.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they're always iconic. West Ham fans want Dr. Martens on their shirt.
Chelsea with Commodore. Because that does sort of bring us back, because football is all about memories and shared experiences, which we then discuss for the rest of our lives.
Yeah, but it's strange. It's strange though which of those particular sponsors seem to strike more of a chord than other. I mean, you can imagine why Brighton fans don't particularly want to buy shirts with Nobu on. But at the same time, I don't quite understand why, for Palace fans, it's the Virgin Airlines one that brings back all the memories when that's the kit we wore when we lost.
Was that Right and Bright?
Yeah. It was, but it's also lost the FA Cup final era, and we've had some quite cool. Yeah. But it just seems that somehow one particular. I suspect it's also to do with the generation. I think what happens is you've got a generation of kids who were 10 in the Right and Bright era who are now. They've got decent jobs and a bit of money, and they're harking back to their first ever. One 5-year plan interviewed Neil Warnock a couple of weeks back, And it was very interesting because the other two lads with me are much younger than I am. And they, Warnock was never my favourite Palace manager, but I don't associate him with a particular success. But for those two, it was their first team they remembered. So they were asking him all about these players that I had to look up afterwards because they just, fringe players that for them were really exciting youngsters, and for me were like, what? But they're but that's their generation. I wouldn't be able to tell you who the sponsor was. They would definitely be able to tell you who the sponsor was because that was the first shirt they bought, or their parents or their uncles bought for them. Adrian Moran has our next question, and Adrian says, "I've been wondering about PSR /FFP because still don't know what to call them, and cash balances. If a club has been able to generate enough money to create a surplus of cash, could it use this reserve to offset any future PSR implications? So, for example, if a club had been running sustainably for a long time and sold players over that period, building up sizable cash reserves, would they still face PSR sanctions further down the line if they were to fail PSR rules during a subsequent 3-year cycle, even if that club had millions in the bank from previous good financial management?" First of all, I know from working on the Palace Foundation, I didn't know this before, that charities don't like to have large cash reserves. The Charities Commission don't like charities to have large cash reserves because they want the money to be spent on the charity. It's never occurred to me for a second that there are football clubs with large cash reserves out there.
Oh, there are. I think Manchester United about 150 million quid.
Wow, okay.
Because what we see in the world of football is the erratic nature of cash flow. If I'm running a greengrocer, if I'm running a local petrol station, you've broadly got the same number of people coming in every day, and you've got the overheads, which are fairly constant as well. With a football club, you've got big peaks and big troughs in terms of cash flow. If you think about it, people renew their season tickets normally March, April, May perhaps. So that brings in a lot of money. The Premier League gives a big proportion of the annual TV money at the start of the summer because that helps to fuel the transfer market and that keeps attention as far as the Premier League is concerned. So whereas the money going out is fairly constant, and if you get to February or March, and I was talking to a finance director of a club in one of the lower leagues, he says, our big fear is that if it gets to, let's say it gets to January, if we're 14th, we ain't going to go up, we ain't going to go down. We've been knocked out of the third round of the FA Cup, so we've not got a match that weekend. We could end up with one home match in January. We're 14th. We're playing the clubs at 16th. We've got they're not a rival. Who's actually going to pay £25 in cash to come and watch it? And so cash flow is a huge issue, and cash management is a huge issue. But returning to Adrian's question, PSR is based on profit rather than cash. And those are two very independent issues as far as business management is concerned. But I absolutely understand where he's coming from. If you've sold a load of players successfully in recent years, and you were sustainable anyway, those gains effectively drop out and they become unused. It's a bit like having a sometimes I remember when I was a kid, you get a record voucher for your birthday, but you had to use it within 6 months.
Yeah.
And if you didn't use it, it was lost.
Right.
Well, it's exactly the same when it comes to profits from player sales, and that's why we see some clubs accelerating or deferring sales around the 30th of June, because that will give them 1 year less or 1 year's more worth of profit, which goes into their PSR calculations. But the long and the short of it, Adrian, is no, if you can run a club sustainably for 3 years, you can make a load of profit in that. And if you want to then go and spend in the subsequent, you can't roll those profits forward.
So if Brighton, for example, were to be told by the Premier League that they had exceeded PSR losses by 30 million quid, Tony Bloom couldn't just say, "Oh, that's all right, we've got 50 million quid in the bank."
Yeah,
have that.
Yeah. No. It's because profit and cash are deemed to be independent of one another.
Do you know what? I've been laughing about these light-hearted summer pods, Kieran, but I'm learning a lot. Learning a lot. Richard D has the last question of the last light-hearted summer break pods. And Richard D says, I've been thinking about the massive... I love the fact that so many of our listeners do a lot of thinking. They do a lot of thinking.
Or chatting to their mates in the pub.
Yeah, same thing. Richard D says, I've been thinking about the massive difference between revenue generated by the Premier League in TV money and that generated by La Liga, Liga 1, Serie A and the Bundesliga. As a result, I was wondering how much these European leagues receive in transfer of players from their leagues to the Premier League, or to put it another way, which clubs have received the most transfer money from the Premier League since the league was formed. And I wonder, Kieran, would you include the EFL in that?
Well, I had done.
You have, great. I thought you would. Yeah.
So, I've not done this on a club by club basis. I've done it on a holistic basis, and I feel I'm going to bring in my inner Alan Fluff Freeman here, and I'm going to announce them in reverse order, just to keep the tension going. I've done it I've gone down as far as the top 8. So in 8th position, it's the Jupiter Pro League from Belgium, with just under £500,000 £500 million since the inception of the Premier League. So this data comes from 1992 to the present. In 7th place, we have the Eredivisie in the Netherlands at around about 1.2 billion. In 6th place, the Primeira from Portugal, just under 1.5 billion. We then come in 5th place, Serie A of Italy, 2.5 billion, and literally, a couple of tens of thousands above that, the Bundesliga in 4th place with 2.52. In 3rd place is La Liga, with just under £3 billion in player sales. And in 2nd place, the EFL Championship.
Wow.
So and this is one of the arguments that's put forwards by the Premier League. So look, we don't think we should give more money in terms of redistribution of TV monies, because look at all the money that we are effectively we are spending on what they would call grassroots football. I would argue that's quite lumpy. And my other issue there is that it's clubs who are nominally in the Championship, but if you took out the sales of clubs that have just been relegated, if you think about when Leicester City were relegated a couple of years ago, well, Harvey Barnes went immediately, James Maddison went immediately. They said, well, actually, they're Premier League players who've been sort of recycled back to the Premier League. But that's sort of a moot argument. But the league which has been most successful, our very good friends across the water in France, it is Ligue 1, with just over £3 billion in Premier League history.
If you've shopped online, chances are you've bought from a business powered by Shopify. You know that purple Shop Pay button you see at checkout? The one that makes buying so incredibly easy? That's Shopify. And there's a reason so many businesses sell with it, because Shopify makes it incredibly easy to start and run your business. Shopify is the commerce platform behind 10% of all e-commerce in the US. Sign up for your $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.com/promo. Go to shopify.com/promo.
This episode is sponsored by Shopify. When we started The Price of Football and things started to take off, it all got a bit overwhelming at times as we were suddenly sorting out recordings, interviews, live shows, and our online store. When you're starting off with something new, it seems like your to-do list keeps growing every day with new tasks, and that list can easily begin to overrun your life. Finding the right tool that not only helps you out, but simplifies everything can be such a game changer. For millions of businesses, that tool is Shopify.
Shopify is the commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world, from household names like Mattel and Gymshark to brands just getting started. With Shopify, you get your own design studio that includes hundreds of ready-to-use templates. You can accelerate your content creation with Shopify's AI tools that write product descriptions, page headlines, and even enhance your product photography. And you can easily create email and social media campaigns wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling. If you're ready to sell, you're ready for Shopify.
Turn your big business idea into with Shopify on your side. Sign up for a £1 per month trial period at shopify.co.uk/priceoffootball, all lowercase. So go to shopify.co.uk/priceoffootball to take your business to the next level today. That's shopify.co.uk/priceoffootball. That's really interesting. I would never have put those two. Obviously, those I thought the Championship would be in there, but I would never have had those two as the top two. I would have thought Belgium just because of De Bruyne and one or two other massive. But that's really.
But De Bruyne went from Wolfsburg.
Of course. We're talking about from leagues, not nationalities.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. Also, what's really interesting about the Championship being so high. And I accept your argument about these. Some of them are recycled Premier League players, but the amount of conversations we've all had in pubs when we've said, "Why? There's a load of good players in the Championship. Why aren't we looking?" Adam Wharton, for example, is one of the few examples of Palace going into the Championship. Arguably our best signing of the last 5 seasons. Arguably. Yeah. So many Palace fans will go, "Well, we keep looking abroad. Let's go into the Championship." But then, of course, you do that, and there were still plenty of Palace fans when we bought Wharton going, "Why are we buying from the Championship? We should be getting established Premier League players." But that's a lot of money that the Championship have made out of the Premier League there, though. But also disappointing that the Premier League say, "Yeah, we are circulating money." That is our way of redistributing money. No, it's not. You're buying things. It's not. Thank you to everyone who has joined the Price of Football Club. If you'd like to join that club too and get every episode a day earlier than everyone else, ad-free listening and invite to our monthly Q&A sessions, bonus episodes and more, and go to our website, priceoffootball.com. If you have a question you'd like answered on the show, email us at questions@priceoffootball.com. Don't forget you can follow us on X and you can find us on YouTube. And if you'd like to buy one of our books or even a Price of Football t-shirt, you can find all the details on our website, priceoffootball.com. I almost feel, Kieran, excuse me, we're back on... see, that's the cough of a man
We're back.
That's the cough of a man who's had to do 4 pods in a row, that is, Kieran.
That is really true.
We need a union, basically. We're back on Tuesday, back in our old routine on Tuesday. I almost feel we should end these special pods with a customary farewell from Mr. Kieran Maguire.
Well, yes. Thank you to everybody who has supported us in so many ways. I gave a talk a couple of weeks ago to a fans group, and at the end of it, a young lady came up and said, "I'd like to go and thank you and Kevin." And this is quite an emotional moment, but thank you and Kevin. I had cancer a couple of years ago.
Oh, shit.
And I was in recovery. And somebody said, "Listen to this podcast." And she said, "I binge listened every single episode. And you put a smile on my face and you helped me as part of my recovery." So I'd like to say, not as traditional farewell, I'd just like to say, congratulations, Lynn, on the continuation of your recovery. And for everybody that's in good times and bad, lots of love from myself and Kevin.
Absolutely. I'm welling up now, you ratbag. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
The Price of Football. The Price of Football.